All right, hey, I'm going to show you some highlights from my very first interview. It's a buddy of mine, Lindsay, from my acting company in Los Angeles, and I drove down to Long Beach to interview him. Here's a couple shots of his apartment and the view from his apartment. All right, now before you make any assumptions about him as a conservative, being that he had that fantastic apartment, it was just a one-bedroom. He and his wife, they were kind of busting at the seams. There's not a whole lot of space, so he's not that kind of conservative, like super duper wealthy or whatever. All right, so we're gonna get into a couple things here. So check out. I'm not gonna say much here. Just check out this next clip. Just check it out.
Recently, the continuation of the federal extenuation of unemployment benefits wasn't voted in. It was not continued.
Right.
Subsequent to that, months later, the unemployment rate dropped, showing that people who were now off of unemployment found a job. So there's a disincentive, numerically was proven, that there was a disincentive to finding a job if you're receiving benefits.
All right, I'm going to continue this clip right from that point, but I just want to interject for a second. Two things about that piece right there. One was the smile. There's a type of smile that makes me furious, and it's that smile that is like, I got you. I'm smarter than you. I gotcha. It's a very condescending, superior smile. So, did you notice that smile? And then the other thing was just sort of self-assured, kind of, I felt a little pompous, like mathematically it's been proven. Well, you're taking a piece of data and making a conclusion about it. That's not mathematically proven. You're drawing a conclusion based on the data. That's not proving it. That's your belief, that's your opinion of the cause and effect relationship, but that's not proving it. So anyway, I really wanted to jump in at that point. But I stayed silent, and this will be an important technique or tactic in the interviews to come. So check out what he says right after. I'll just continue the clip right along from where it was.
So, do people need benefits? Yeah, but is there a law of diminishing returns? Yes, there is.
All right, see what just happened? So, I stayed quiet, I just listened, and in the very next breath, he says something that we can agree on. Do people need help? Yes. Boom. Okay, common ground. Fantastic. Great. And then, is there a law of diminishing returns? Yes. So, law of diminishing returns meaning if you give people too much assistance, then there's a disincentive to work. And I can get behind that as well. I may not be very popular among my liberal or progressive friends, but I think that is true. I don't know how we can disagree with that. If we take it to its extreme, in other words, if I'm getting $100,000 for doing nothing, then I would do nothing. Well, I would work because I can't stand not working, but I would do something. I'd probably make a lot of films, or put on a lot of play. I just do acting and creative stuff. But I digress. The point is, since I stayed quiet at that moment where I wanted to argue and I just listened, in the very next breath, there were two things that I can actually agree with. And if we're talking about those two things, do people need assistance? Yes. And law of diminishing returns. So now we can talk about what kind of programs we can try, and we can develop ways to create and measure the effectiveness of programs so that we can effectively address poverty. Great, All right, so later on in the interview, I had another opportunity to stay quiet. Check it out.
One of the things that currently is animating the Democratic Party, I think, is a sense of oppression. We had a war on women. That's what the Democrats are running on right now. It's a war, not even a disagreement about something. It's a war on women, which is, come on.
All right, So what's the first thing that pops up when you hear war on women and a critique of war on women? Well, the first thing that pops up for me is, dude, every time I turn on Fox News, there's a war on Christmas. You want to talk about hyperbole? Freaking war on Christmas. That's like your side does it more than... So instantly I want to be like, your side does it more than my side, right? But again, I stay quiet and then watch what happens.
This is hyperbole. It's not a war. There are disagreements, yeah. We can try to negotiate those disagreements. But to demonize, and this, the right does this too, to demonize the other side, to make them into devils, isn't helpful from either perspective.
Yeah. All right, you see that? The right does this too. He made my point for me. So, no, this is not going to happen every time, but by staying quiet and just listening, just listening, he made the point for me, The right does this too, and they do. And it makes me want to, okay, listen, like a war on women, that is hyperbole. So we can choose more effective language to express our, our urges, our needs, our desire to create a more equal workplace, a more equal society, one in which women and men are valued in the same way. But we can do it without using hyperbole. That's how I would like to do it. So I actually kind of agree with them. Both sides. Can we give up a war on Christmas, and then if they give up a war on Christmas, then we can give up a war on women. How about that? All right, so later on in the interview, he makes a very, just age-old conservative argument, which at this point, I decided not to stay silent, so check it out.
Why should a person who's a blue-collar worker be taxed, and they're just getting by, be taxed to the degree to which they're taking that person's money and giving it to someone who's not working? Why is that just? Here's the problem.
The argument for that would be that if the person who's not working is in a situation,
valid reasons for not working,
or if there's like some sort of like systemic issue. All right, so on that one, I decided to step in and actually make a point. We kind of got sidetracked after that, so the rest of that conversation isn't really that important. But here's another spot where I decided to step in as well.
The VA arrangement, because those veterans are not being taken care of the way they should be.
Couldn't one argue that the programs that are designed to help veterans are cut by Republicans?
Well, I think the entire budget process comes under more scrutiny from Republicans.
I often think the small government, of the Republic, the current mantra of small government and fiscal responsibility, when it comes to defense, doesn't really apply. It's like we're going to spend...
I think that's true, that the Republicans tend to be more defense-oriented. I think you're absolutely right about that.
All right, so I made a point. I stepped in, made a sort of a counterpoint, and Lindsay, he said you're absolutely right about that. Then he kind of couched it in language that was a little bit... I wasn't a big fan of the language, Yes, Republicans seem to be more defense-oriented. My point was more... Republicans are hypocritical when it comes to... They're not consistent. Hypocritical, I don't think is the right word. They're not consistent in their application of fiscal responsibility. So I think that's a weak part of their argument. But he did say, you're absolutely right, and I agree with you, so I appreciated that. And then since we were talking about defense, he said this about World War II, which I'll explain why why I think it's so interesting after you check it out. Watch.
By the time the war ended, our government was deep in debt, right?
Yeah.
But we won the war.
Right.
Or helped win the war.
Sure.
The Russians actually won the war.
Yeah.
20 million.
20 million of them,
20
yeah,
million
exactly.
versus 400,000.
Right.
Yeah, I think they won the war.
Yeah. All right. I find that fascinating because one of the assumptions that I came into the documentary with is that Republicans, conservatives, they are very patriot. There's like an ultra patriotism that makes me a little uncomfortable. It seems inconsistent with the truth. It seems overly. It seems to put patriotism in America over criticism of our injustices, the injustices that we have. Oh gosh, my words are failing me. It doesn't seem honest, and it doesn't seem reflective of the actual truth. And here is a conservative. He's more libertarian than Republican, but he's conservative, and he is admitting that it was the Russians really that won World War II. I mean, we helped, of course. You know, I don't want to take away from the service that any of our servicemen and women gave. But when you consider the sacrifice that they had to make, 20 million Russians died in that war. To like Lindsay said, 400. I didn't realize it was 400,000. That's a lot, but 20 million is astronaut. It's almost unfathomable to have 20 million people die in a war. So I thought his acknowledgement of that was surprising and very refreshing. It made me trust what he has to say. When I hear people who are committed to the truth above their own feelings or above patriotism, and I trust them. I like it. It's precise. It's specific. Those are two themes, by the way, that are going to continue throughout the whole documentary: is precision and specificity. So anyway, I don't want to ramble on and on and on and on and on and on about it, but it was pretty amazing for him to say that. I really liked it. So we finished the interview, and then he got up to make me a sandwich, and a couple cool things happened. I'm going to show you that right now. Check it out. Do you think your parents and who they were and where they were from had influence on your political views?
Absolutely. My father had grew up had polio.
Your father had polio?
As a child, he had one leg very small.
Oh my gosh.
So he couldn't really do any hiking and that kind of stuff. But what he could do was, and we did a lot of, was fish out of a boat. This is tuna I caught. This is Fisherman's Landing tuna, see? So when I caught the fish, I turn in my tuna and they give me cans.
All right, so two cool things about that. First, the fact that he's serving me tuna fish that he himself caught is epically cool. And the fact that his father, he learned to fish from his father, and he still fishes. It's like a way of remembering his father, a way of honoring his father, and it's kind of cool to have that he has that connection to his father. I was really touched by that. And then the other thing that was cool about that is that I saw where his conservative beliefs come from. His father had polio, but he didn't let polio stop him, and he didn't take any handouts. Here, I'm going to show you another. I'm just going to continue rolling because he talks a little bit more about his father. You'll see where his conservatism is like obvious. It just pops right out of his father. So check it out.
He worked his way through medical school. Played saxophone in a band. Worked his way through college and then medical school playing music on the shores of Lake Erie. Big band swinging music. And he had his own practice. Those are the days when, if you were a physician, you could make a good living with your own private practice. So, my father never played on anyone for sympathy for his polio. My father was never a victim. He was never a victim. He didn't draw any attention to it. He did whatever he could do. He couldn't hike, but he could sail, he could fish. Yeah, he was a good man. If I could be half the man my father was, I would be a successful human being.
It just makes total sense, doesn't it? His father, polio, never accepted a handout, figured out that he could fish instead of hike, played saxophone. I don't know where played saxophone doesn't really connect with being conservative, but the fact that he never played on his disability, it just plays very, very neatly into the conservative narrative. Now, I can disagree with the conservative narrative. I can disagree with, that that's possible for everyone. I have my own views coming from the left about that. However, I can understand that from Lindsay's experience with his father, that he would naturally have that kind of opinion. And it's worth it to us on the left to consider that people are capable of really extraordinary things, even given their limitations. I'm not saying we need to abandon our view. We need to abandon anything that we're fighting for. It's just interesting to think about. It just makes it more textured. Another theme that's going to happen in this documentary is that things are complex. Nothing is simple. None of the important things are simple anymore. Immigration, welfare, war, none of these things are simple. They're complex and they take some thinking. So I think we on the left need to do some thinking and consider some of the things that conservatives are telling us. All right, so that's it. We ended with, I'm just going to play out a little bit more. He served the tuna fish, and then we just kind of hung out on his patio talking, and he asked me about my dad, and we talked for like 20 minutes about my dad and how he was in the CIA for 27 years, and now he's a peace activist and stuff like that. I'm not sure if I've actually mentioned that yet, but so it was cool. He got a chance to talk about his dad, and I got a chance to talk about my dad. It was just a really cool interview. There was some disagreeing, but there were some discoveries, and I came out of this interview, and because I did the interview to test and see whether this wasn't something I wanted to do, or whether this project was just stupid and I'm not worth pursuing. But I just came out of there just feeling like I was onto something. There was something cool happening, and something different happened in that conversation that normally happens in my conversations with people from the other side. So, all right, so let's play some video of me and Lindsay eating tuna. Yeah, my dad was he was at Fordham, and he needed to fill in his schedule with one more class when he was either a freshman or a sophomore, and he decided to take Russian.
Oh, wow.
For some, I don't even know the reason. He was just like, no, I'll take Russian. Fell in love with it. Majored in it, got his master's, started teaching, graduated from Fordham in 1961, and had gone to college on a ROTC scholarship, and then the CIA made a deal with the Army, so he wouldn't have to serve his 2 years. He went to basic training, and then he went straight to Langley. Wow.